Picture this, a red-eye flight from Chicago to Seattle, 90 minutes up. Turbulence slamming the cabin like a fist. Lena Carter, a black woman in a crisp flight attendant uniform, stands steady in the galley while passengers scream. A white businessman snarls, figures she's clueless. Black girl can't handle this. Lena grabs the intercom, her voice slicing through panic like a blade, calming the chaos. She's no ordinary worker. She's the CEO undercover, and this night will shatter her life. What's her next move? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. And if you stand for justice, smash that like and subscribe for more stories that hit hard and fight back. Minutes after the turbulence settles, the cabin hums with a brittle calm, the kind that teeters on the edge of snapping. Lena Carter moves through the narrow aisle of the red-eye flight from Chicago to Seattle, her polished shoes tapping softly against the carpet, her braided hair pulled tight in a bun that gleams under the dim overhead lights. She's checking seat belts, offering nods to rattled passengers, her face a mask of quiet strength despite the storm that just rocked the plane. At 30,000 feet, the air smells of stale coffee and recycled oxygen, thick with the faint tang of fear still lingering from the chaos. She adjusts a loose blanket on an elderly woman's lap, her fingers quick and sure when a voice cuts through the murmur like a jagged knife. Should have stayed in the back, sweetheart, it drawls, loud enough to turn heads. Lena's eyes flick up, locking onto Richard Hale, a white businessman sprawled in first class, his tailored suit crisp despite the hour, his salt and pepper hair catches the light as he leans back, a smirk curling his lips, his whiskey glass dangling loosely in one hand. He's a real estate mogul, the kind who owns half the skyline in Chicago, and he's got the arrogance to match. Passengers nearby shift uncomfortably, some pretending to fiddle with their phones, others stealing glances to see what happens. Next, Lena's chest tightens, but she's faced worse. Her years climbing the corporate ladder teaching her to swallow venom without flinching. She steps closer, her posture straight as a steel rod, and offers a measured reply. Can I assist you with anything, sir? Her voice is smooth, professional, a shield against the barb. Richard chuckles, a low, guttural sound, and takes a slow sip of his drink, letting the ice clink against the glass before answering. Just wondering how long till you mess this up too, he says, his tone dripping with mockery. The woman beside him, Diane Hale, his wife, adjusts her designer scarf, her manicured nails flashing scarlet as she leans into him, her whisper sharp and deliberate. Guess they'll hire anyone these days, she says, her voice pitched just loud enough for Lena to catch every syllable. Bet she can't even read the manual, probably some quota pick. Her lips twist into a thin smile, her blue eyes glinting with a mix of disdain and amusement. A few passengers stifle laughs, their heads dipping as if they're not part of this. But the sound grates against Lena's ears like sandpaper. She's used to this, the casual cruelty tossed her way like it's nothing, but it still stings, 1,000 tiny cuts she's learned to hide. She doesn't blink, doesn't let her hands shake as she reaches up to secure an overhead bin that's popped open. Her movements precise, almost mechanical. Richard's smirk widens, feeding off her silence, and he shifts in his seat, crossing one leg over the other like he's holding court. You know, he says, louder now, I paid good money for this flight. Didn't expect the help to be so underwhelming. Diane giggles, a high-pitched sound that echoes through the cabin, and a man to Rose's back snorts, his bald head gleaming as he nods in agreement. Lena's jaw tightens, a flicker of heat rising in her throat, but she keeps moving, her focus locked on the next task. She's not here to brawl with entitled fools, not yet anyway, though every word they spit lodges in her mind like a bullet waiting to fire back. She brushes past Richard's seat, her arm grazing the edge of his armrest, and he jerks back exaggeratedly, sloshing his whiskey onto the tray table in front of him. Amber liquid pools around his magazine, soaking the glossy pages, and he slams the glass down with a thud that makes the tray rattle. Look at this, he barks, his voice booming now, drawing every eye in first class. Can't even walk straight without screwing things up. He swipes at the spill with a napkin, his movements sloppy, deliberate. and then flings the soggy cloth onto the floor at Lena's feet. "Clean it up," he snaps, leaning back with a smug grin, his eyes daring her to argue. Diane claps her hands once, a sharp little burst of delight, and adds, seriously, "What's the point of her if she can't even do that right?" The laughter spreads like a virus, rippling through the rows. A chorus of chuckles and muffled guffaws from passengers who'd rather join the mob than stand out. Lena's pulse kicks up, pounding in her ears, but her face stays a fortress, unreadable, unbreakable. She bends down, picks up the napkin with 2 fingers, and drops it into a trash bag she's carrying, her motions fluid, controlled, like she's defusing a bomb instead of mopping up a rich man's mess. Richard watches her, his grin stretching wider, a predator savoring the squirm of prey, and he leans forward, his elbows on the tray, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I won't tell your boss you're useless," he says, winking at Diane, who covers her mouth to stifle another laugh. "Wouldn't want you back on the street where you belong." The words land like a slap, raw and ugly, and for a split second, Lena's fingers freeze on the bag, her breath catching in her chest. She's heard this garbage before, from boardrooms to backrooms, but tonight it's sharper, more personal, a blade aimed at her core. She straightens up, her spine rigid, and meets his gaze head-on, her brown eyes burning with something he doesn't catch, something dangerous. "I'll get you a fresh drink, sir," she says, her tone flat, clipped, a promise wrapped in politeness. She turns away, heading for the galley, her steps steady despite the weight of their stares boring into her back. The cabin buzzes with their amusement, a low hum of whispers and snickers, but Lena's mind is racing, cataloging every face, every word, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She's not just a flight attendant tonight, not just a punching bag for their egos. She's the CEO of this airline, undercover on her own plane, and she's already plotting her next move. Richard's spill was no accident. It was a test, a jab to see how far he could push her. And she knows it's only the beginning. She grips the edge of the galley counter, her knuckles whitening for a moment before she releases it, her breath steadying as she pulls a new glass from the rack. She's been in tougher spots than this, clawed her way up from nothing to own this company, and she's not about to let a loudmouth in a suit unravel her. But as she pours the whiskey, her ears catch the murmur of Diane's voice drifting from the cabin, smug and certain. "He'll have her gone by morning," she's saying. And Richard's laugh follows, deep and triumphant. Lena's lips twitch, the faintest hint of a smile, because they have no idea who they're dealing with, no clue that this flight is her chessboard. And she's already 3 moves ahead. She slides the drink onto a tray, her hands steady as stone, and steps back into the aisle, ready for the next round, knowing the real fight's just getting started. The red-eye flight from Chicago to Seattle hums along at 35,000 feet. The cabin lights dim to a faint glow, casting long shadows across the seats. Lena Carter weaves through the tight island coach, her tray balanced with cups of water and soda, her uniform still spotless despite Richard Hale's earlier stunt in first class. The air's thick with the scent of cheap perfume and sweat, the turbulence a fading memory. But the unease lingers, a current buzzing beneath the surface. She's mid-service, handing a ginger ale to a kid with headphones, when a gruff voice snaps her focus like a whip. "Hey, you, hurry it up already," it barks, sharp and impatient. Lena turns, her gaze landing on Tom Grayson, a burly white guy in a wrinkled gray polo shirt, his thick arms crossed over a barrel chest. He's got the weathered look of a retired cop, his buzzed hair streaked with silver, his jaw set like he's chewing gravel. He's sprawled across his seats in row 15, his meaty hand tapping the armrest, his eyes narrowing as they rake. Over her, lazy black help always slows things down, he mutters, loud enough for the rows around him to hear, his lips curling into a sneer. A woman nearby adjusts her glasses, pretending not to notice, while a guy in a baseball cap snickers. Under his breath, Lena's stomach twists, a familiar knot of anger and exhaustion, but she keeps her voice level, her training kicking in like muscle memory. "I'll be right with you, sir," she says, sliding the tray onto a cart with a practiced flick of her wrist. She steps closer, reaching for his empty cup, when Tom lurches forward, his elbow slamming into her side with a force that sends her stumbling. Her hip bangs the cart, a jolt of pain shooting up her arm as she catches herself, the metal edge, leaving a dull ache in her flesh. Cups rattle, a few tipping over, spilling ice across the floor in a clattering mess. "Oops," Tom says, leaning back with a fake wince, his tone dripping with mockery. "Guess she tripped, like they all do." His eyes glint, daring her to call it out, and a ripple of chuckles spreads through the nearby seats, a low hum of amusement at her expense. Lena's breath hitches, her fingers curling into her palms, but she forces them to relax, her face a blank slate as she kneels to scoop up the ice, her arms bruising already, a faint purple blooming beneath her sleeve, but she doesn't let it show. Doesn't give him the satisfaction. "No problem, sir," she says, her voice steady as she rises, brushing her hands on her apron. "Can I get you anything else?" Tom snorts, a harsh bark of a laugh, and leans into the aisle, his bulk blocking her path. "Yeah, how about someone who can actually do the job?" he says, his words slicing through the cabin air. "Bet you're only here 'cause they felt sorry for you." The guy in the baseball cap nods, muttering, "For real," and a teenage girl across the aisle giggles into her phone, her thumbs flying over the screen. Lena's pulse hammers, a drumbeat in her ears, but she's a fortress, her expression locked tight, her hands steady as she fetches a towel from the cart. She wipes the spill, her movements quick and deliberate, every swipe a silent defiance against the weight of his stare. She's not just a flight attendant tonight, she's the CEO of this airline, undercover on her own turf, and she's clocking every move, every slur, her mind a steel trap snapping shut around their words. Tom's not done, though. He's just warming up, his voice rising as he turns to the passengers around him. "Back in my day, we didn't let people like her ruin a good flight," he says, his chest puffing out like he's on a stage, taut, and their place quick-shoved right where they belonged. He mimes a push with his hands, a slow, exaggerated motion, and the woman with glasses flinches, her eyes darting to Lena, then away. The baseball cap guy grins, a flash of teeth, and says, "Should have kept that up, man." Lena's skin prickles, a surge of heat climbing her neck, but she keeps moving, her hands wrapping around a fresh cup, filling it with water from a pitcher. She sets it on Tom's tray with a soft clink, her eyes meeting his for a split second, a flicker of something fierce passing through her gaze before she buries it. "Here you go," she says, her tone flat, a wall of calm he can't crack. Tom grabs the cup, takes a swig, then slams it back down, water sloshing over the rim, figures it's warm. He grumbles, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Can't even get that right." The teenage girl giggles again, louder this time, and snaps a photo of Lena with her phone, whispering, "Total fail," to her friend. Lena's fingers twitch, the urge to snatch that phone flaring bright, but she clamps it down, her discipline ironclad. She steps back, pushing the cart forward, her hip throbbing with every move, but she doesn't falter, doesn't let them see the pain. She's halfway to the next row when Tom's voice booms again, a smug edge cutting through the hum of the engines. "Hey everyone, watch this one, she's a real pro at falling flat," he says, and the laughter swells, a wave crashing over her. Lena's chest burns, a wildfire raging inside, but she keeps her head high, her steps measured, her focus locked on the galley ahead. She's not here to play their game, not yet. She's here to win it, and she's already plotting how to turn this trap into a weapon. Tom leans back, satisfied, his arms crossed again, his smirk wide as he brags to the baseball cap guy. "See that? Taught her a lesson she won't forget," he says, his voice thick with triumph. "Next time, she'll know better than to waste my time." The guy nods, chuckling. "Yeah, put her right in line." Lena's ears catch it all, her sharp mind filing every word, every laugh, her resolve hardening like steel in a forge. She reaches the galley, sets the cart aside, and grips the counter, her knuckles whitening for a heartbeat before she lets go. She's been through worse, fought bigger battles to claim this airline, and she's not about to let a washed-up bully derail her. But as she steadies her breathing, she hears Tom's low mutter drift through the cabin, a promise wrapped in Venom, we'll see how long she lasts, he says, and the baseball cap guy laughs, a sound that echoes in her ears like a warning shot. What do you think, folks? Comment number 1 if you're raging at Tom's garbage attitude, or number 2 if you think Lena should have clapped back right there. Like this video if you're rooting for justice to hit hard, and subscribe to catch how this fight unfolds, because trust me, it's about to get wild. So, what's Tom cooking up next with that smug grin? And how's Lena holding it together when the whole plane's against her? The red-eye flight from Chicago to Seattle drones on. The cabin a claustrophobic cocoon of flickering lights and restless bodies. The air heavy with the stale bite of recycled oxygen. Lena Carter slips into the galley, her hip still pulsing from Tom Grayson's shove, a dull ache she buries beneath her iron resolve. She's just escaped his taunts and coach. The echo of his smug taught her a lesson still clawing at her ears. But she needs a breather, a moment to reset before the next wave hits. The galley's a narrow sliver of sanctuary, its stainless steel counters cold against her palms as she leans in. Her braided bun reflecting faintly in the polished surface. She rolls her sleeve up, inspecting the bruise blooming across her arm, a splotch of purple against her dark skin, and flexes her fingers, testing the pain. It's nothing she can't handle. She's taken harder hits climbing to the top of this airline. But tonight's different, tonight's personal. She's the CEO, undercover on her own plane. And every jab from these passengers is a thread she's weaving into a noose for them. She adjusts her uniform, smoothing the creases with a quick tug, when a low murmur filters through the thin partition separating the galley from first class. It's Richard Hale's voice, oily and confident, the real estate mogul who'd doused her with whiskey and disdain earlier. We'll get her, and by morning, he's saying, his tone thick with certainty. Lena freezes, her breath catching, and edges closer to the partition, her sharp ears straining to catch every word. Diane Hale's whisper follows, sharp as a blade. Assault, that's what we'll call it, she says, her voice dripping with glee. That shift from Tom, she'll take the fall. Nobody'll believe her over us. Lena's pulse kicks up, a rapid thud against her ribs, but her face stays stone, her mind racing. She slides her smartwatch into view, its sleek black face glinting under the galley's fluorescent glow, and taps a discreet button, the tiny mic kicking on with a faint hum. She's no rookie. She's built an empire on outsmarting snakes like these, and she's not about to let them slither away. Richard's laugh rumbles through the partition, a deep, guttural sound. I've got a buddy in security at Seattle Tacoma, he says, his words slurring slightly from the whiskey. One call, and she's toast. They'll drag her out in cuffs. Diane claps softly, her scarlet nails clicking together. Perfect, she purrs. She's got no business here anyway. Probably begged her way into this gig. Lena's jaw tightens, a flicker of rage sparking in her chest, but she keeps still, the watch recording every syllable. Every breath. The partition muffles their voices, but she catches Tom's name again, Richard muttering. He's already on board. Says he'll swear she swung first. Lena's lips twitch, the barest hint of a smile breaking through her mask, because they're handing her a loaded gun without even knowing it. She stops the recording, saves it to a cloud server only she can access, and leans back against the counter, her mind whirring like a turbine. She's got them now. Solid proof of their conspiracy, a ticket to flip this game on its head. She rolls her sleeve back down, hiding the bruise, and steps out of the galley, her posture straight, her steps deliberate, ready to face the cabin again. But as she passes the cockpit door, it cracks open, and the captain, a weary white guy named Greg with a salt-streaked beard, motions her inside with a quick jerk of his head. She slips in, the door clicking shut behind her, and he keeps his voice low, his hazel eyes serious. Lena, I heard what's going on out there, he says, his hands resting on the controls. The planes hum a steady pulse around them. You've got trouble brewing, big trouble. She nods, her expression unreadable, and he scratches his jaw, glancing at the co-pilot, who's focused on the altimeter. I saw Tom shove you. Heard Richard mouthing off. Greg continues, his tone clipped. You've got that recording, right? Lena taps her watch, a single sharp motion, and he exhales. A rough sound. Good. But listen, It won't save you yet, he says, his voice dropping lower. Richard's not bluffing. He's got connections. Deep ones, cops, lawyers, the works, and Tom's an ex-sheriff with a grudge. Lena's stomach dips, a cold ripple cutting through her triumph, but she keeps her gaze steady, her voice firm. I can handle it, she says, her words a quiet vow. Greg shakes his head, his brow furrowing. You don't get it, he says. They're not just talking firing you, they're aiming to bury you. Legal trouble, the kind that sticks. He pauses, his eyes flicking to the windshield, the black expanse of night stretching endless beyond the glass. I'm with you. But this is bigger than a smartwatch clip. They'll twist it. Say you provoked M. Lena's fingers curl into her palms, her nails biting skin, but she nods, processing his warning like a chess player reading the board. She's tasted victory for a moment, the recording an ace up her sleeve. But Greg's right. These aren't small-time bullies. They're a machine with gears she can't see yet. Thanks for the heads up, she says, her tone cool, and turns to leave, her mind already spinning new moves. She steps back into the cabin, the door clicking shut behind her, and the noise hits her again. The low buzz of chatter, the clink of glasses, the weight of eyes tracking her every step. Richard's still lounging in first class, his smirk a permanent fixture, Diane scrolling her phone beside him, no doubt texting her HR contact to tighten the noose. Tom's voice drifts from coach, a gravelly laugh as he brags to someone about putting her in her place. Lena's smile is gone now, replaced by a steely glint in her eyes, her recording a weapon she'll wield when the time's right. She moves to the next row, adjusting a passenger's blanket with a quick tug, her hands steady despite the storm brewing inside. She's won a skirmish, caught them plotting on tape, but the war's just starting, and Greg's warning rings. Loud, they've got power she can't outrun yet. She glances at her watch, the tiny screen dark but alive with their voices, and feels a surge of defiance because they think they've got her cornered. But she's been cornered before, and she's always come out swinging. The plane dips slightly, a soft lurch as it begins its descent towards Seattle, and Lena braces herself, knowing the landing won't be the end of this fight. It'll be the spark that lights the fuse. The red-eye flight from Chicago to Seattle slices through the night, 30 minutes from touchdown. The cabin a restless hum of shifting bodies and muted whispers. Lena Carter glides back into first class, her tray loaded with fresh drinks, her bruised arm hidden beneath her sleeve. The smartwatch recording of Richard and Diane's plot a secret ember burning in her pocket. The air's thick with the tang of spilled whiskey and expensive cologne. The plane's descent a faint tilt underfoot as she moves with purpose, her braided bun catching the overhead lights. She's still reeling from Captain Greg's warning. His words about Richard's connections a splinter lodged in her mind, but she's not buckling. Not yet. She's the CEO undercover, and this is her turf. She sets a water on a passenger's tray, her fingers steady. When Richard Hale's voice booms from his seat, sharp and jagged like broken glass. Hey, you. What's your badge number? He demands, his salt and pepper hair glinting as he leans forward, his tailored suit creased from slouching. His whiskey glass is empty again, the tray table stained with rings, and his eyes are bloodshot, narrowed with a fury that's new, hotter than before. Lena pauses, her tray balanced, and meets his stare, her voice calm as a frozen lake. I don't wear a badge, sir, but I can assist you if you need something, she says, her words clipped. Professional, a shield against his heat. Richard slams his palm on the tray, the thud echoing through first class, drawing gasps from nearby seats. Don't play dumb with me, he snaps, his face flushing red. I know you were sneaking around, spying on us. I saw you fiddling with that watch. Diane Hale looks up from her phone, her scarlet nails pausing mid-text, and smirks, her blue eyes glinting with malice. Probably recording us to sell some sob story, she says, her voice a venomous hiss. You people don't belong up here. Go scrub toilets where you fit. The words land like a punch, raw and ugly, and a ripple of cheers erupts from the seats behind them. A balding man in a pinstripe suit clapping slowly, a woman in pearls nodding with a tight smile. Lena's chest tightens, a storm of rage and humiliation churning inside. But she keeps her face blank, her posture rigid, Her years at the top teaching her to bury the flinch. She's not just a flight attendant tonight. She's the one who owns this airline, and she's not about to let them see her sweat. I was adjusting my watch, ma'am, she says, her tone flat, and shifts the tray to one hand, her free fingers brushing the device discreetly. Logging Diane's outburst in a text file sent to her cloud, Richard lurches forward, his breath sour with booze, and jabs a finger at her chest, stopping an inch short. You think you're slick, huh? He snarls, his voice rising to a bellow. I've had enough of your attitude. I want your supervisor, now. The cabin buzzes, heads craning. A teenage boy in a hoodie filming with his phone, his friend whispering, "This is gold." Lena's pulse hammers, but she stands tall, her 5'8" frame a pillar against his storm, and replies, "I'll inform the crew, sir." Her words a quiet blade. She turns, her steps measured, and heads for the galley, her tray steady despite the tremor she fights in her hands. Richard's not done, though, his voice chasing her down the aisle. "Yeah, run along, sweetheart, you're finished here," he yells, and the balding man calls out, "About time someone put her in check." Diane's laugh cuts through, high and shrill, a sound that claws at Lena's ears as she reaches the galley's edge. She sets the tray down, her knuckles whitening on the counter, and takes a slow breath, her mind racing. She's got their plot on tape, their latest outburst logged. She's building a case brick by brick, but Greg's warning looms large. Their power's deeper than she'd guessed. She's mid-thought when Diane's voice drifts in again, smug and clear, her phone pressed to her ear. "Hey, Cheryl, it's me," she says, her tone syrupy with triumph. "We've got a problem, attendant. Assaulted us, spied on us, the works. I need her gone like yesterday." Lena's stomach drops, a cold wave crashing over her. Because Cheryl's got to be HR, someone high up, and Diane's pulling strings right now. She leans against the counter, her sharp eyes narrowing, and taps her watch again. Recording this call too, her fingers swift and silent. Diane's still talking, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "Yeah, Richard's buddy at securities. Ready, and Tom's got the assault angle locked. She's toast, Cheryl, trust me." Lena's breath steadies, her mind clicking like a lock tumbling into place, because this is gold. Pure dynamite, proof of their whole scheme laid bare. She saves the file, her lips curling into a faint, fierce smile, because they're digging their own grave. And she's the one holding the shovel. She grabs a fresh tray, her hands steady now, and steps back into the aisle, her resolve a steel core running through her spine. Richard's still sprawled in his seat, his smirk wider, his eyes tracking her like a hawk on a mouse. "Took you long enough," he says as she passes, snatching a water from her tray without a word, his fingers brushing hers with a deliberate nudge. Diane pockets her phone, her smirk matching his, and mutters, "Enjoy your last shift." Her voice low but meant to sting. The balding man chuckles, a guttural sound, and the woman in pearls claps her hands once, a sharp little burst of glee. Lena keeps moving, her tray a lifeline, her face a mask of calm, but inside she's a furnace, burning with the knowledge she's got them dead to rights. The plane dips again, the descent sharper now, and the seatbelt sign pings on, a soft chime, swallowed by the rising chatter. She's almost to coach when Richard calls out one last time, his voice a taunt wrapped in velvet. "Better hope your next job's easier, sweetheart," he says, and the laughter swells, a wave crashing over her back. Lena doesn't flinch, her steps carrying her forward, her watch a ticking bomb strapped to her wrist. She's won a round, caught their counterattack on tape, but Diane's call to HR is a dagger aimed at her throat, and Greg's warning echoes loud. Their connections run deep, and this fight's about to spill off the plane. She reaches the galley again, sets the tray down, and grips the edge, her knuckles whitening for a heartbeat before she lets go. She's been here before, underestimated, cornered, but she's always clawed her way out, and this time's no different. She's got proof, she's got power, and she's not about to let them bury her without a fight. The red-eye flight from Chicago to Seattle touches down with a jolt, the wheels screeching against the tarmac at Seattle-Tacoma International, the cabin shuddering as the plane slows to a crawl. Lena Carter steps off the aircraft, her polished shoes clicking on the jet bridge. Her uniform still crisp despite the bruises and battles of the past few hours. The night air hits her like a slap, cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of jet fuel and rain-soaked asphalt. She's got Richard Hale and Diane's conspiracy locked in her smartwatch. Tom Grayson's shove and taunts too, an arsenal of evidence. She's itching to unleash, but her chest hums with unease. Greg's warning about their connections, a dark cloud overhead. She adjusts her braided bun, her fingers steady, and strides into the terminal. The glass walls reflecting her tall frame as passengers stream past. Their chatter a dull roar in her ears. She's almost to the crew exit, her mind racing with next moves when a hand clamps down on her shoulder, hard and unyielding. Hold it right there. A voice growls and Lena spins, her pulse spiking, to face two airport security guards. Both white, their navy uniforms stark under the fluorescent lights. The taller one, a lanky guy with a buzz cut and a badge reading Officer Kent, tightens his grip, his thin lips curling into a sneer. "You're coming with us," he says, his tone clipped, final. The second guard, stockier, with a ruddy face and a mustache, steps in close, his hand hovering over his cuffs. "Gotta report you threaten passengers," he adds, his voice thick with disdain. Lena's stomach lurches, a cold wave crashing over her, because this is Diane's HR. Call in action, Richard's security buddy pulling strings faster than she'd expected. "There's been a mistake," she says, her voice calm, steady. Her years as CEO kicking in to keep her grounded. "I'm a flight attendant. I didn't threaten anyone." Kent snorts, a harsh sound, and yanks her arm, twisting it behind her back with a jerk that sends a jolt of pain through her bruised hip. "Should have known you'd cause trouble," he mutters, his breath hot against her ear. Typical. The word lands like a brick, racist and raw, and the stocky guard snaps the cuffs on, the metal biting into her wrists with a sharp click. Passengers slow, their eyes wide, some pulling out phones to film, a teenage girl gasping, "Oh my God." What did she do? Lena's chest burns, a wildfire of fury and humiliation, but she keeps her head high, her gaze locked on Kent's smirking face. "I need to speak to your supervisor," she says, her tone firm, citing protocol like a lifeline. The stocky guard laughs, a guttural burst, and shoves her forward, his palm slamming between her shoulder blades. "Supervisor's busy," he says, "and you don't get to make demands, princess." The crowd parts, whispers swelling into a hum, a businessman in a trench coat muttering, knew she was trouble, while a woman with a stroller shakes her head, her lips pursed. Lena's feet stumble under the shove, but she catches herself, her resolve a steel rod down her spine, because she's not just a flight attendant, she's the CEO. And this is her airline they're trashing. They march her through the terminal, the cuffs chafing her skin, her smartwatch still strapped tight. Its recording's a ticking bomb she can't reach yet. The guards steer her past the baggage claim, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and into a side corridor, the walls gray and peeling, the air stale with dust. Kent's radio crackles, a voice spitting. Hale says make it quick, she's a problem. Lena's ears prick, her sharp mind snagging the name, Richard's hand all over this. And her jaw tightens, a flicker of defiance sparking through the haze. They shove her into a holding room, a cramped box with a metal table and a single chair, the door slamming shut with a clang that echoes in her skull. Kent leans against the wall, his arms crossed, his sneer widening. "You're in deep now," he says, cracking his knuckles with a slow pop. "Assaulting passengers, resisting us. You're lucky we don't haul you straight to jail." The stocky guard chuckles, pacing the room, his boots thudding on the concrete. "Bet she's used to this," he says, always playing the victim. Lena's blood boils, a surge of heat climbing her neck, but she sits, her posture straight, her voice cutting through their taunts. "I didn't assault anyone," she says, "and I'm entitled to a supervisor under your own rules." Kent steps forward, looming over her, his shadow swallowing the table. "Rules don't apply to you," he snaps, "not when you've got big shots like Hale calling the shots." The stocky guard nods, twirling his cuffs like a toy. "Yeah, sit tight, troublemaker, you're done here." Lena's fingers flex against the cuffs, her mind racing, because this is systemic. A machine grinding her down, and Greg was right. Their power's a web she's tangled in. She's still processing, her sharp eyes scanning the room, when the door creaks open and Tom Grayson strolls in, his burly frame filling the threshold. His wrinkled polo shirt stretched tight over his gut. His buzzed hair gleams under the light, his smirk a slash across his weathered face. And Lena's stomach twists, a fresh wave of dread crashing over her. Well, he says, his voice gravelly, triumphant. Told you I'd teach her a lesson. He leans against the doorframe, his arms crossed, his eyes glinting with malice. Got a witness outside. Saw her swing at me. Poor defenseless passenger, he adds, his grin widening. Kent laughs, a sharp bark, and the stocky guard claps Tom on the shoulder, a buddy-buddy gesture that turns Lena's gut. Ex-sheriff, huh, Kent says. You've got this locked down. Tom nods, his chest puffing out. Damn right, he says. She's finished. I've got pull from here to the governor. She won't wiggle out of this. Lena's breath catches, her mind spinning, because Tom's not just a loudmouth. He's a player with roots deep in the system, and he's rigged a lie to bury her. The guards step back, giving Tom the floor, and he saunters closer, his boots scuffing the floor, his smirk a blade aimed at her throat. Should have stayed in your lane, he says, his voice low, venomous, but don't worry, I'll make sure you never forget this. Lena's heart pounds, a drumbeat of fury and fear, but she meets his gaze, her brown eyes burning, because she's got proof, she's got power, and she's not breaking yet. The room closes in, the cuffs biting harder, and Tom's grin stretches, a predator savoring the kill. As the guards watch, complicit, waiting for her to crack. Hey, what's your take on this? Comment number 1 if you're boiling at Tom's dirty trap, or number 2 if you think Lena's still got a shot to fight back. Like this if you're screaming for justice to hit these clowns. And subscribe to see how this mess explodes next, because it's only getting crazier. So, with Tom gloating and the system tightening its grip, how's Lena gonna claw her way out of this cage? The holding room at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport feels like a coffin, its gray concrete walls pressing in, the air stale with the scent of sweat and old coffee. Lena Carter sits cuffed to a metal chair, her wrists raw from the bite of steel, her bruised hip throbbing under her uniform as the fluorescent bulb overhead buzzes like a trapped wasp. Tom Grayson's gloating still echoes in her ears, his ex-sheriff swagger and rigged witness a noose tightening around her neck, while the guard's racist sneers linger like smoke. She's alone now, the door locked, the silence heavy, but her mind's a storm, churning through moves and countermoves, because she's not just a flight attendant. She's the CEO of this airline, and she's not done fighting. Her smartwatch sits on the table, confiscated by Kent, its recordings out of reach. A lifeline she can't touch yet. She shifts, the cuffs clanking. When a soft scrape breaks the quiet, a shadow flickering under the door, it swings open, and a young black janitor slips in, his weary frame hunched in a faded blue jumpsuit, a mop propped against his shoulder. His name tag reads Jamal, his eyes darting to the hall before he shuts the door with a quiet click. Heard what's happening, he whispers, his voice low, urgent, and pulls a battered flip phone from his pocket, sliding it across the table. Make it quick. They'll be back soon. Lena's pulse leaps, a jolt of hope cutting through the haze, and she grabs the phone, her cuffed hands awkward but swift, her sharp mind locking onto this chance. Thank you, she says, her tone firm, grateful, and dials a number she knows by heart. Her chief operating officer, Marcus Reed, a bulldog of a man who's been her right hand for years. The line crackles, then connects, Marcus's deep voice, rumbling through. Lena, where the hell are you? He says, his worry sharp. She keeps it tight, her words clipped. Airport holding room, security's got me on a fake assault charge. Richard Hale and Tom Grayson's doing. I've got recordings, but they're coming for me hard. Marcus curses, a low growl, and she hears him pacing, his shoes thudding on hardwood. I'm on it, he says. Board's meeting in an hour. I'll pull strings, get you out. Lena nods, though he can't see it, her breath steadying. Freeze Hale's company flight account too, she adds, her voice a steel thread. Use my CEO codes. Hit him where it hurts. Marcus chuckles. A rough sound. Done. They won't know what hit him. The line cuts and Lena slides the phone back to Jamal, who pockets it with a quick nod. His eyes warm but wary. You're tougher than they think, he says, and slips out. The door clicking shut just as boots echo down the hall. Lena leans back, her lips curling into a faint smirk, because she's struck first, a jab at Richard's wallet. And Marcus is her cavalry, charging in. The cuffs bite harder, but her spirit's rising. A glimmer of light in this pit. Her recording's a bomb. She'll drop when the time's right. She's mid-thought when Kent bursts in, his lanky frame tense, his buzz cut glinting under the light. The stocky guard trailing behind, his mustache twitching. Who are you talking to? Kent snaps, his eyes narrowing, and yanks her smartwatch off the table, tossing it to his partner. Nobody, Lena says, her tone flat, unshaken. But Kent steps close, his breath sour with tobacco. Don't lie, princess, he snarls. We heard something. You're not slipping out of this. The stocky guard laughs, a grating sound, and leans in, his ruddy face inches from hers. Nobody's saving you, he says. Not with Hale and Grayson running the show. You're toast. Lena's chest tightens, their racist venom a familiar sting, but she holds their gaze. Her brown eyes steady, because Marcus is moving, and she's not alone anymore. Kent slams a fist on the table, the metal ringing, and grabs her arm, hauling her up with a jerk that twists her bruise into a flare of pain. Let's see how smart you are now, he says, and shoves her toward the door. The stocky guard following, his cuffs jangling like a threat. They march her back into the terminal. The crowd thinner now, the clock ticking past midnight, the air buzzing with exhaustion. Lena's steps are firm, her resolve a fire stoked by Jamal's risk, Marcus's promise. When the glass doors ahead slide open and Richard Hale storms in, his tailored suit rumpled, a weary lawyer at his side in a pinstripe vest, his glasses glinting. Richard's face is a mask of fury, his salt and pepper hair wild, and he jabs a finger at Lena, his voice booming across the lobby. That's her, he yells, drawing every eye. She hacked my company account, shut down our flights. Felony theft, lock her up. The lawyer nods, pulling papers from a briefcase, his voice smooth and cold. We've got evidence. Officer, she accessed restricted systems. It's airtight. Lena's stomach drops, a cold shock slicing through her hope, because this is Diane's HR call morphing into a monster. Richard's counterattack hitting harder than she'd braced for. Kent grins, a slash of teeth, and tightens his grip, the cuffs cutting deeper. Oh, you're in it now, he says, and the stocky guard chuckles, shoving her forward. Told you. Princess, no way out. The terminal spins, passengers gawking. A woman in a red coat whispering, hacker, really? While a kid with a backpack films. His jaw slack. Lena's mind races, her smirk gone, because Marcus froze the account. But Richards flipped it into a felony, a lie with teeth and toms. Witnesses still out there, tightening the trap. The lawyer steps closer, his papers rustling, and hands them to Kent, his tone clipped. Immediate detention, he says. We'll press charges by morning. She's a threat. Richard looms behind, his smirk back, wider, darker, his eyes glinting with triumph. Thought you could play me, he says, his voice low, venomous. You're done. Sweetheart, I own this game. Lena's heart pounds, a drumbeat of fury and fear. But she stands tall, her sharp eyes flicking to the lawyer, then Richard, because she's got Marcus, she's got proof, and this isn't over. Kent drags her toward a side room, the stocky guard trailing, their laughter a blade in her back. And Richard's voice follows, a taunt that lands like a punch. Sleep tight, he says. You won't see daylight for a while. The door slams shut, the lock clicks, and Lena's alone again, her cuffs cold, her hope a fragile thread. Because she's struck a blow, but Richards hit back with a sledgehammer, and the system's closing in fast. The Seattle-Tacoma International Airport holding room fades behind Lena Carter as Officer Kent and his stocky partner march her out, her wrists still cuffed, the metal edges grinding against her skin with every step. It's past midnight. The Terminal's fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the polished floor. The air thick with the scent of disinfectant and lingering jet fuel. She's on bail now. Marcus's pull with the board springing her loose after Richard Hale's felony theft accusation. But her smartwatch is still confiscated, her recordings locked away, and her bruised hip pulses with a dull ache she ignores. She's free, but not safe. Not with Tom Grayson's fake witness and Richard's lawyer spinning lies that could land her in prison. She adjusts her uniform, her braided bun slightly frayed, and heads for the exit, her sharp mind plotting next. Moves when a roar stops her cold. Outside the glass doors, a crowd swells, 50, maybe 60 people, their faces twisted with rage. Their voices a jagged chorus cutting through the night. Fire the thug, they chant, fists pumping, signs bobbing in the damp Seattle air. The words scrawled in bold red. Dangerous black attendant attacks passengers. Lena's stomach twists, a sickening lurch, because this isn't random. It's orchestrated, and Tom's hand is all over it. She steps closer, the glass cool against her palm, and spots him in the mob's heart, his burly frame towering, his wrinkled polo shirt damp with sweat as he bellows into a megaphone. She assaulted me, a paying customer, he yells, his gravelly voice booming. We won't stand for this garbage. The crowd roars louder, a woman in a green jacket screaming. Send her back where she came from, while a guy with a goatee waves a flyer, Lena's face plastered across it. Her uniform stark against a grainy background, the headline screaming violent threat on flight. Lena's chest burns, a wildfire of fury and dread, because this is racial hatred weaponized. A smear campaign exploding in real time, and she's the bullseye. She's not just a flight attendant. She's the CEO, but they don't know that. And right now, she's a target with no shield. The terminal doors is open as a passenger shoves past, joining the mob, and Lena catches Tom's smirk, his buzzed hair glinting under the streetlights as he pumps a fist, egging them on. She pulls out her phone, her hands steady despite the cuff's lingering sting, and starts filming. The lens capturing every shout, every sign, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She uploads it to a private server, her fingers flying, because this is evidence, fuel for the fire she'll ignite when she drops the CEO bomb. The crowd surges closer, a few pounding on the glass, their palms leaving smudges, and a man in a trucker hat spits, the globs splattering inches from her feet. Get out of our airport, he snarls, his voice raw, and a teenage girl beside him snaps a photo. Giggling, she's toast now. Lena's pulse hammers, but she keeps filming, her resolve a steel core. Because she's been here before, underestimated, attacked, and she's always turned it back on them. She's mid-recording when a security guard, not Kent, approaches, his bald head shining, his tone gruff but neutral. You need to move, he says. They're getting out of hand. Lena nods, pocketing her phone, and heads for a side exit, her steps quick, deliberate. The mob's chants chasing her like a pack of wolves. She's almost to the door when a flyer flutters past, snagging on her shoe, the words "Justice for Victims" scrawled above her photo, a lie so bold it steals her breath. She kicks it off, her jaw tight, and slips outside. The cool air a brief relief as she flags a cab to her hotel, her mind racing. She's got the mob on tape, a weapon to wield. And Marcus is working the board, but the ground's shifting fast, and she's not in the clear yet. The cab pulls away, the airport fading in the rearview, and she leans back, her sharp eyes scanning the night, when her phone buzzes. A news alert popping up. She taps it, and her blood runs cold. It's a local station, Diane's brother anchoring, his slick blonde hair and smug grin filling the screen. Breaking news, he says, his voice smooth. Polished, flight attendant Lena Carter, a violent fraud, assaulted passengers and hacked company systems, sources confirm. The screen cuts to a photo of her in uniform, her face stern, then flashes to Tom, his megaphone raised, the mob cheering behind him. She's a disgrace, he says on air, and we're taking her down. The anchor nods, his tone grave. Authorities are investigating, but public outrage is clear. This woman's a danger to us all. Lena's fingers tighten around the phone, her knuckles whitening, because this is Richard's empire striking back. Diane's family ties twisting the knife, and it's bigger than she'd feared. She's at the hotel now, the cab idling as she steps out, the neon sign flickering above. The air heavy with rain. She checks in, her voice steady, and heads to her room. The carpeted hall silent, her bruised hip aching with every step. She locks the door, sinks onto the bed, and replays the news clip, her sharp mind dissecting every word, every frame. She's got the mob's footage, Marcus's moves. But this hit piece is a sledgehammer, a public execution fueled by racist lies, and Tom's not letting up. She sets the phone down, her breath slow, deliberate, and pulls her laptop from her bag, logging into her server to back up the video, her fingers swift, precise. She's mid-upload when a new alert pings, another station picking up the story. The headline screaming, Black Attendant's reign of terror, and her stomach drops, because the narrative's spiraling, and she's the villain now. She's about to call Marcus when a thud shakes the window, a rock bouncing off the glass, cracking it with a spiderweb of fractures. She leaps up, her heart slamming, and peers out, the street below alive with shadows. A handful of the mob tracked her here, their voices rising in a fresh chant. No safe place for thugs, they yell, and a bottle shatters against the wall. Glass raining down, Lena's breath catches, her sharp eyes scanning the dark. Because Tom's not just rallying a crowd, he's unleashing a hunt, and Richard's behind it. His felony charges spark now ablaze. She steps back, her resolve hardening, because she's got proof, she's got power, but they're coming for blood. And this glimmer of hope is flickering fast. The phone buzzes again, Marcus's name flashing, and she answers, his voice tight. Boards with you. But this is war now. He says, stay sharp, Lena. They're not stopping. She nods, her voice a quiet vow. Neither am I, she says, and hangs up, the cracked window a mirror to the fight ahead. Because they've turned the world against her, and she's got to turn it back. The hotel room in Seattle feels like a bunker under siege, the cracked window letting in a thin whistle of night air, the distant shouts of the mob fading into an eerie hum. Lena Carter sits on the edge of the bed, her laptop glowing in the dark, her uniform rumpled, but her resolve unbent, the bruise on her hip a dull throb she pushes aside. It's midnight, the clock ticking past 1, and the news alerts still buzz on her phone. Diane's Anchor Brothers hit piece branding her a violent fraud, the mob's racist flyers plastered across social media. Tom Grayson's lies fueling a firestorm. She's got their attack on tape, the rock through her window a fresh scar, but she's not cowering. She's the CEO of this airline, and she's ready to strike back. Her sharp eyes flick to the laptop, her server upload complete, the mob's footage locked and loaded, and she dials Marcus Reed, her coup, her voice steady despite the chaos. Marcus, it's time, she says, the line crackling as he picks up, his deep growl cutting through. Boards with you, Lena, he says. They saw the news, they're pissed. What's the play? She leans forward, her braided bun catching the screen's light, and lays it out, her words a quiet blade. I'm the CEO. They need to know it. Push the recordings to the board, then leak them online, anonymous drop. Let the world see what they've done. Marcus whistles, a rough sound, and she hears him typing, his energy electric. Hale's account's frozen, board's ready to back you. I'll send the files now, he says. Leaks live in 10, this'll blow 'em wide open. Lena nods, her lips curling into a fierce smile. Because this is her move, a king's gambit to flip the board. She hangs up, her fingers flying over the keyboard, pulling up the recordings from her smartwatch, since before security snatched it. Richard's conspiracy, Tom's shove, Diane's HR call, all crystal clear. She packages them with the mob video, her hotel attack, and sends it to Marcus, her breath steadying as the upload bar fills. She's mid-thought when her phone rings, an unknown number, and she answers, her instinct sharp, a voice smooth and cold cuts through. Richard's lawyer, his pinstripe vest practically audible. Resign, he says, no preamble, his tone of velvet threat. Walk away, or we'll ruin your kind for good. Hale's got the power, you've got nothing. Lena's chest tightens, a surge of rage flaring. Because this is racial venom distilled, a promise to crush not just her, but everyone like her. "I don't scare easy," she says, her voice steel, and hangs up. Her sharp mind clocking his desperation. They're rattled, and she's about to rattle them more. The leak goes live, Marcus texting, "It's out," and Lena pulls up a news site, her heart pounding as the story breaks. Shocking audio. Passengers plot against flight attendant. The recordings hit like a thunderclap, Richard's voice snarling about security. Tom bragging about his shove, Diane's smug HR call. The mobs chants a damning chorus. Social media erupts, hashtags trending, hashtag justice for Lena spiking as strangers. Rage, "This is disgusting." While others post the flyers, "Look at these liars." Lena's smile widens, a rare crack in her armor, because she's turned their weapon against them. The world's waking up, and she's not the villain anymore. She leans back, her laptop warm against her thighs, and watches the tide shift. A passenger from the flight tweeting, "I was there, she didn't do anything," while a news anchor, not Diane's brother, calls it a disgrace to humanity. She's mid-scroll when a crash explodes outside, glass shattering in the parking lot below, and she bolts to the window, her pulse spiking. Her rental car's a wreck, the windshield smashed, the hood carved with jagged letters, "Go back." The racial slur beneath it raw and red under the streetlights. Lena's breath catches, a cold shock slicing through her triumph, because this is Tom's doing, his mob's not done, and they've tracked her here again. She grabs her phone, filming the wreckage, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest, and uploads it. Another brick in her case, because they're not stopping, and neither is she. The car's tires are slashed, fluid pooling beneath, a message in every cut, and she spots shadows moving, 3 figures darting into the dark, their hoods up. Tom's burly silhouette unmistakable, her sharp eyes narrow, her mind racing, because this is retaliation, a counterpunch to her leak, and it's personal now, violent. A step beyond the airport chaos, she steps back, her hotel room a fortress under fire, and checks her phone, the leak's views climbing past 10,000. Comments flooding, "Arrest these clowns." And she's a hero, she's winning the public, the board's behind her. But Tom's thugs are a wild card, and Richard's lawyer's threat rings loud. They're not backing down. She paces, her polished shoes silent on the carpet, and pulls up the airline's system, her CEO codes still active, locking Tom's personal flight history. A petty jab to twist the knife. She's mid-command when her phone buzzes. A text from Marcus, "Board's calling an emergency meet. You're clear, but watch your back." Lena nods, her jaw tight, because she's landed a blow. The takedown's begun, but the war's escalating, and Tom's not slinking away. He's doubling down. She glances at the cracked window, the car's wreckage a glaring warning, and steadies her breath, her resolve a steel beam. Because she's got the world watching now, but the shadows outside are closing in, and this fight's about to get uglier. What do you think, folks? Comment number 1 if you're cheering Lena's epic comeback, or number 2 if you're stunned Tom's still swinging this dirty. Like this if you're hooked on her fight against these creeps, and subscribe to catch the next blow, because this is far from over. So, with the leak shaking the world and Tom's thugs hitting back, what's Lena facing when the sun comes up? The Seattle dawn creeps through the cracked hotel window, a pale gray light spilling across the room, casting jagged shadows on the carpet where Lena Carter paces. Her laptop hums on the bed, the leaked recordings still trending, her rental cars, wreckage a smoldering testament to Tom Grayson's thugs in the lot below. It's 5 in the morning, the air thick with the damp chill of rain-soaked streets. Her uniform swapped for a black hoodie and jeans, her braided bun tight against her skull. She's the CEO of this airline, her identity still a secret to the public, but the board's with her, Marcus's moves locking Richard Hale's accounts, and the online outrage is a tidal wave crashing against her enemies. She's mid-stride, her phone buzzing with updates when a pounding shakes the door, a heavy, relentless thud that stops her cold. "Police, open up." A voice barks, sharp and commanding, and Lena's pulse spikes, a jolt of dread cutting through her focus. She steps to the door, her sharp eyes narrowing, and cracks it open. The chain rattling as 3 cops in dark blue uniforms fill the hall. their faces stern, their hands on holsters. The lead officer, a broad-shouldered man with a crew cut and a badge reading SKT, Daniels, shoves a warrant through the gap, his gray eyes glinting with authority. Lena Carter, you're under arrest, he says, his tone flat, final. Fabrication of evidence, felony tampering. Step out now. Lena's stomach drops. A cold wave crashing over her, because this is Richard's counterattack, twisting her leak into a trap, and it's hitting harder than she'd braced for. That's a lie, she says, her voice steady, her ears at the top keeping her grounded. I've got proof. Those recordings are real. Daniels snorts, a harsh sound, and kicks the door, the chain snapping with a metallic screech as they storm, his boots thudding on the floor. Back to the ghetto, liar, he snaps, his words a racist lash, and grabs her arm, twisting it with a force that flares pain through her bruised hip. The second cop, a weary guy with a scar over his brow, yanks her laptop from the bed, his fingers rough as he stuffs it into an evidence bag, while the third, a stocky woman with a buzzed head, snatches her phone, her smirk wide. Should've known you'd fake it, she says, typical scam from your kind. Lena's chest burns, a wildfire of fury and fear, but she keeps her head high, her sharp eyes locked on Daniels as he cuffs her, the steel colder, tighter than before. Biting into her raw wrists, they drag her out, the hall spinning, the hotel clerk gawking from the desk as they haul her into the street. The dawn light glinting off the wrecked car, a crowd already gathering, phones flashing. Got her, a man yells, his voice raw, and a woman in a parka cheers. Finally, Lena's breath catches, the mob's hatred a living thing, because Tom's smear campaign's metastasized, and Richard's flipped her truth into a lie. They shove her into a squad car, the door slamming with a clang, and Daniels leans in, his breath sour with coffee. Hale's judge friend says you're done. He says, evidence is trash. You're the criminal now. The car peels out, sirens blaring, the hotel shrinking in the mirror as Lena's mind races, her sharp mind clawing for a foothold. She's uncuffed in the back, her hands free but useless, and she spots a burner phone tucked in her hoodie pocket, Jamal's gift from the airport, a lifeline she'd forgotten. She slips it out, her fingers swift, silent, and texts Marcus, police raid, fake charges. Need you now. Her breath steadying as she hits send. The reply buzzes fast, Marcus's words terse. Lawyers en route, boards mobilizing. Hold. Tight, Lena pockets the phone, her sharp eyes flicking to the cops up front. Daniels barking into the radio. Suspect secured. Hale's orders, while the weary guy chuckles. Easy takedown. She's got Marcus, she's got the board, but this is deeper, darker, a judge in Richard's pocket. And her recordings are twisting against her. The precinct looms ahead. A squat brick building ringed with squad cars, the air buzzing with static. As they pull in, dragging her out with rough hands, her sneakers scraping the pavement. They march her inside, the lobby stark with fluorescent glare, cops glancing up from desks, their eyes cold, curious. Daniels shoves her into an interrogation room, the walls scuffed, the table bolted down, and slams her confiscated devices in front of her, the laptop and smartwatch a taunting pile. You're cooked, he says, leaning close, his gray eyes glinting. Judge voided your little stunt. Tampering's the charge, kiss your life goodbye. Lena's pulse hammers, but she sits, her posture rigid, her voice cutting through. His sneer, I didn't tamper with anything, she says, and you'll see that soon. The weary cop laughs, a sharp bark, and leans against the wall, his scar twitching. Keep dreaming, he says, nobody's buying your crap. The stocky woman nods, twirling a pen, her buzzed head gleaming. Hale's got the system, you've got nothing, she says, and steps out. The door clicking shut, leaving Lena with Daniels and his venom. She's mid-breath when her phone, the burner, buzzes in her pocket, a news alert sneaking through, and she risks a glance, her sharp eyes scanning. It's Diane's anchor brother again, his slick blonde hair filling the screen, his voice smooth, triumphant. New evidence, he says, Lena Carter's criminal past exposed. Forged records show a history of violence, fraud. This flight was just the latest. The screen flashes to a mugshot, not hers, a blurry fake, but the caption screams her name. And Lena's blood runs cold, because this is Tom's old precinct at work, planting lies with roots she can't rip out yet. Daniels grins, catching her flinch, and leans closer, his breath hot. "See that?" he says. "You're a ghost now. Nobody'll save you." Lena's fingers curl, her nails biting her palms, because Marcus's lawyers are coming. But this is a tidal wave, Richard's empire striking back with forged history. And the precinct's complicit, a machine grinding her down. They leave her there, the door slamming, the room a cage, and she sits, her sharp eyes flicking to the burner. Her only thread to the outside. She's got the leak, the board. But Tom's precinct and Richard's judge are a wall she can't breach yet. And the fake past is a noose tightening fast. The clock ticks, the dawn stretching into morning, and Lena steadies her breath, her resolve a steel beam, because she's been buried before, and she's always clawed out. But this time, the dirt's deeper, and the empire's not playing games anymore. The interrogation room in the Seattle precinct feels like a tomb, its scuffed walls closing in, the air thick with the stale tang of sweat and burnt coffee. Lena Carter sits at the bolted metal table, her wrists free but her spirit caged, the burner phone in her hoodie pocket a fragile lifeline, after the police raid snatched her laptop and smartwatch. It's noon, the gray light filtering through a high, barred window. Her black hoodie damp with the chill of the cell, her braided bun frayed but defiant. She's the CEO of this airline, her leaked recordings shaking the world. Marcus's lawyers on the move, but Richard Hale's judge and Tom Grayson's forged past have turned her into a public enemy. A violent fraud in the news. She's mid-thought, her sharp eyes scanning the room when the door bangs open, and a swarm of reporters floods the precinct lobby beyond. Their shouts a chaotic roar piercing the silence. "Lena Carter, over here," one yells, cameras flashing through the crack, and she stands, her pulse spiking, because Marcus's team must have pulled strings to get her here, not locked away. SKT, Daniels storms in, his broad shoulders tense, his crew cut glinting under the fluorescent buzz, shoving her toward the door with a rough hand. "Press wants you," he growls, "move it." She steps out, the lobby a circus, microphones thrusting, lenses glaring, and the crowd outside swells, 100 strong, their signs bobbing, "Justice for Hale," clashing with Free Lena in a jagged scream. She's mid-stride, her sharp mind clocking faces, when Richard Hale and Tom Grayson push through, flanked by lawyers. Their tailored suits and wrinkled polo a stark contrast to her hoodie, their smirks wide. Predatory. Richard jabs a finger, his voice booming over the din. "She's a liar and a thief," he yells, suing her for defamation. 10 million. She'll pay for this. Tom nods, his burly frame looming, his buzzed hair slick with sweat. "Attacked me, ruined my life," he says. "We're ending her today." The crowd erupts, a woman in a blue scarf screaming, "Lock her up," while a man in a leather jacket spits, the glob landing inches from Lena's sneakers. His snarl raw, "Go back to Africa." The racial venom hits like a fist, a chorus of jeers swelling, cops lining the steps doing nothing, their eyes cold, complicit. Lena's chest burns, a wildfire of fury and fear, but she keeps her head high, her 5'8" frame a pillar as the mob surges, bodies pressing the barricades. A teenage boy hurling a cup that splashes her leg with soda. She's the CEO, not just a victim, and she's not breaking yet when Marcus's team crashes through. 3 lawyers in sharp suits, their leader, a weary black woman named Tanya with a buzzed fade, shoving a tablet into the air. Live stream. Tanya shouts, her voice cutting through, and the screen flares, the real flight footage rolling. Richard's conspiracy, Tom's shove, Diane's call, unedited, raw, blasting across the web. The crowd falters, gasps rippling, a guy in a hoodie, muttering, "Wait, what?" As the truth hits, Lena's sharp eyes catching the shift. A crack in their wall. Tanya grabs a megaphone, her tone fierce. "This is the real story," she yells. "She's innocent. They're the frauds." The stream spikes, millions watching, comments flooding. "Holy crap, they lied, and she's a badass." Lena's breath steadies, her resolve a steel core, because this is her move, her proof unshackled. And the tide's turning fast. She steps forward, her voice calm, cutting. "I've got more where that came from," she says, staring down. Richard, whose flush deepens, his smirk gone, Tom's grin faltering beside him. The crowd splits, some cheering, "Lena, Lena," while others boo, a woman in a red hat screaming. Fake news, but the momentum's hers, the live stream a sledgehammer cracking their lies. She's mid-stride, Tanya at her side, when Richard's lawyer, the weary guy in pinstripe, lunges forward, papers flapping. "Your Honor's ruled," he yells, shoving a document at Daniels, who grins, his gray eyes glinting. "Evidence tampered, voided," Daniels barks, "Arrest her again." Now, the cops surge. Kent among them, his lanky frame shoving through, cuffs snapping back on Lena's wrists with a vicious twist that flares pain through her bruised arm. The crowd roars, chaos erupting, Tanya shouting, "This is illegal," as the stream catches it all. The world watching live, Lena's dragged back, her sneakers skidding, the mob parting then closing. A man in a trucker hat yelling, "Get her," while a woman with dread screams, "Let her go." Daniels hauls her to the precinct steps, his grip iron, and shoves her against the wall, his breath hot. "Judge says you're done," he says. "Hale owns this, you're nothing." Lena's heart pounds, her sharp eyes flicking to Tanya, who's filming, her voice a lifeline in the storm. "We've got this, Lena." Tanya yells, but the cuffs bite deeper. The mobs hate a tidal wave, and Richard's judge has flipped her win into a noose. She's mid-struggle, her breath ragged. When Tom steps close, his burly frame blocking the cameras, his smirk back, wider, darker. "Told you I'd bury you," he whispers, his voice gravelly, triumphant, and nods to Daniels, who slams her harder, the concrete scraping her shoulder. The live stream glitches. The crowd's roar drowning Tanya's shouts, and Lena's sharp mind races, because she's got the world's eyes, Marcus's lawyers. But Richard's empire's striking with a vengeance, and this breaking point's a razor's edge. The precinct doors loom, the cuffs cold, as she steadies herself, her resolve a steel beam. Because she's been crushed before, and she's always risen, but this time, the system's a beast, and it's not letting go yet. The Seattle precinct's jail cell is a concrete box, its walls stained with years of despair. The air heavy with the sour bite of mildew and rust. Lena Carter sits on a metal bench, her wrists raw from cuffs now gone, her black hoodie torn at the shoulder where Esquiti. Daniels slammed her against the wall, her bruised hip screaming with every shift. It's evening, the barred window above leaking a dull orange glow from the setting sun, her breath visible in the chill as she fights to steady it. She's the CEO of this airline. Her live-streamed footage a global firestorm, Marcus's lawyers battling outside, but Richard Hale's judge has voided her proof, and Tom Grayson's lies have locked her here, the mob's racist chants still echoing in her ears. She's mid-thought, her sharp eyes tracing cracks in the floor, when the cell door clangs open, and Tom strolls in, his burly frame filling the space, his wrinkled polo shirt stretched tight, his buzzed hair catching the dim light. His smirk is a slash of triumph, his hands jammed in his pockets as he leans against the bars, his gravelly voice dripping with glee. "You're done," he says, his eyes glinting. "I've got the governor on speed dial. This is my turf, you're not." Walking out, Lena's stomach twists, a cold dread coiling tight, because Tom's not bluffing. His ex-sheriff roots run deep, and he's savoring this kill. "You've got nothing," she says, her voice steady, cutting, her ears at the top keeping her spine straight. Tom laughs, a harsh bark, and steps closer, his boots scuffing the concrete. "Keep talking," he says. "Nobody's listening, not after we finish you." The door creaks again, and two guards slip in, Kent's lanky frame and the stocky woman with the buzzed head, their faces hard, their fists clenched. Kent cracks his knuckles. A slow pop, and the woman smirks, her pen twirling like a blade. "This is what you get," Kent snarls, his voice a racist lash, and lunges, his fist slamming into Lena's gut, a blow that doubles her over, air exploding from her lungs. The woman grabs her hair, yanking her head back, and drives a knee into her side, the bruise flaring into agony. a white-hot spike that steals her breath. Lena's vision blurs, pain searing through her, but she grits her teeth, her sharp mind clawing for control, because she's not just a victim, she's a fighter. And she's not breaking yet. They step back, panting, and Tom nods, his smirk widening. That's a start, he says. Keep her quiet till the governor signs off. Lena's chest heaves, blood trickling from her lip, but her eyes burn, locking onto Kent's sneer. And she spots it. A tiny mic clipped to her hoodie's hem, Jamal's gift from the airport, smuggled past the raid. Her fingers tremble, but she shifts, her voice a rasp as she whispers into it. They're beating me. Tom's here. Get this out. The mic hums, a faint click, and she prays Jamal's still listening, her sharp mind betting on that thread to Marcus, to the world. Kent lunges again, his boot slamming her shin, a crack of pain that drops her to her knees, the concrete biting her palms as she catches herself. Shut up, he yells, and the woman kicks her ribs, a thud that rattles her bones, blood pooling. In her mouth, her hoodie soaking with sweat and crimson. Tom watches, his arms crossed, his grin a predator's delight, and mutters, "Should have stayed down, sweetheart." His voice a taunt that fuels her fire. She's coughing, her breath ragged when the precinct shakes, a distant boom rumbling through the walls, the guards freezing, their eyes wide. What the hell? Kent snaps, and the woman bolts for the door, Tom following, his smirk faltering. Lena drags herself up, her sharp eyes flicking to the window, a plume of smoke rising in the dusk, and her burner phone buzzes in her pocket, Marcus's number flashing. She answers, her voice a broken whisper. What's happening? Marcus's growl cuts through tight. Urgent. Your office, Lena. Bomb went off. Hails behind it, boards in chaos, but the mic's live. We've got M. Lena's heart leaps, a jolt of hope piercing the pain, because Jamal's feed caught the beating, and Richard's gone nuclear, torching her headquarters to bury her. The cell door hangs open, the guard's gone, and she staggers to her feet, her body screaming, her sharp mind racing, because the world's hearing her now, Tom's brutality exposed. But Richard's empire's crumbling, passengers boycotting, his flights, his accounts frozen, and this bomb's his desperate swing. She limps to the hall, blood dripping, her hoodie a rag, and spots a TV in the lobby. The news blaring, CEO's office bombed, live audio reveals assault, her voice rasping through. They're beating me, Tom's gloat a damning echo. The precinct's chaos, cops shouting, phones ringing, and Lena steadies herself against the wall, her sharp eyes glinting, because she's taken the hit, landed one back, but Richard's not stopping. And this final blow's a war cry. She's got the mic, the world, but her body's breaking, and Tom's governor's still out there, a shadow looming larger than the smoke. She sinks against the wall, her breath a shudder, her resolve a steel shard, because she's been beaten before, and she's always risen. But this time, the empire's bleeding too, and the fight's teetering on a knife's edge. The Seattle precinct's chaos spills into the evening, the lobby a swirl of shouting cops and ringing phones, the air thick with the acrid bite of smoke drifting from the bombed airline office. 10 miles away, Lena Carter staggers from the jail cell, her black hoodie shredded, blood streaking her face, her bruised hip a furnace of pain with every limping step. The TV blares, her rasped voice from Jamal's mic echoing. They're beating me. Tom's here, followed by Tom Grayson's gloating, "You're done." A live feed that's rocked the world. Passengers boycotting Richard Hale's flights, his empire teetering. She's the CEO, still a secret to the public, her body broken, but her sharp mind blazing. The burner phone in her pocket buzzing with Marcus's updates. We've got M, hold on. She leans against the wall, her breath a ragged shudder. When sirens wail closer, red lights flashing through the precinct windows, and medics burst in. Their white coats stark against the gray, a stretcher rolling behind. Found her. One yells, a weary guy with a stethoscope, and they rush her, hands gentle but firm, lifting her onto the stretcher as her vision swims, pain spiking through her ribs. Hospital, now, the weary medic says, and they wheel her out, the crowd parting, cameras flashing, a woman in a green coat gasping, she's alive. Lena's sharp eyes catch the news ticker on a screen as they pass. CEO office bombing linked to Hale, and her lips twitch, a faint, fierce smile, because Richard's desperation's backfiring, and she's not finished yet. The ambulance screams through the city, rain streaking the windows, her stretcher rattling as the weary medic checks her pulse, his voice steady. "You're a fighter," he says. "Hang in there." She nods, her breath shallow, and clutches the burner, Marcus's last text glowing. Press conference, 1 hour, boards ready. She's rushed into the ear, the antiseptic sting hitting her nose, doctors swarming, stitching her lip, bracing her ribs, her body a map of scars, but her spirit unbowed. An hour later, she's patched up, her hoodie swapped for a hospital gown, her braided bun loose but defiant, and Marcus storms in, his broad frame filling the doorway. Tanya at his side, her buzzed fade gleaming, a tablet in hand. "Time to end this," Marcus says, his growl fierce, and hands her a blazer, her CEO armor. Bloodstained but hers, she stands wincing, her sharp eyes glinting, and limps out. The hospital halls blurring as they head to Airline HQ, the bombed wreckage cordoned off, smoke still curling from the ruins. A press swarm waits, mixed thrusting, lights blinding, the world watching live. And Lena steps to the podium, her 5'8" frame a battered tower, her voice hoarse but steel. "I'm Lena Carter," she says, pausing as gasps ripple, "and I'm not just the CEO of this airline, I own it." The crowd erupts, a tidal wave of shock. Cameras zooming, a reporter in a trench coat stammering. "What?" She holds up the burner, Jamal's mic feed playing again, Tom's voice damning, "Governor's mine." Ken snarl, "This is what you get," and the bombs echo tying it to Richard. "They mocked me, beat me, bombed my company," she says, "because I'm black, because I rose, but they didn't know who they were fighting." The screen behind flares, flight footage rolling, Richard's conspiracy, Tom's shove, Diane's call. Unedited, real, the judge's ruling. Crumbling under the weight. Richard's there, in the crowd, his tailored suit rumpled, his salt and pepper hair wild, his flush deepening as boos swell, a man in a baseball cap yelling, "You're done, Hale." Tom's beside him, his burly frame shrinking, his smirk. Gun, cops closing in, their badges glinting as they cuff him, his gravelly shout, "This is a setup." Drowned by the roar, Lena's sharp eyes lock on Richard, then sweep the press, her voice rising. "I built this from nothing, and they thought they could take it, but respect isn't a title. It's a fight, and I've won." The twist lands, a sledgehammer. She doesn't just run the airline, she owns it, every plane, every route, her empire. And the world didn't see it coming. Tanya steps up, her tablet flashing, Hale's company's tanking, stocks crashed, passengers walking away, and Marcus nods, his growl proud, Tom's confession on the mic. Bombs his too, he's cooked, the cops drag Richard necks, his lawyer's papers fluttering uselessly, his voice a panicked yelp, "I didn't know." As cuffs snap on, the crowd chanting, "Justice, justice." Lena steadies herself, her body screaming, and limps forward, her sharp eyes burning through the chaos because this is the reversal, her scars a crown, her ownership the blade that cuts them down. The news ticker shifts, CEO owner exposes corruption, Hale arrested, and Diane's brother's face fills a side screen, his slick blonde hair limp, his station dropping him live. "We apologize," a humiliating retreat. Lena's breath steadies, her voice a quiet thunder. "This isn't the end. It's a start. We rebuild stronger. And nobody takes what's mine." The crowd cheers, a woman with dreads screaming, "You're a legend." While a kid in a hoodie films, tears streaking, and Lena steps back, Marcus's hand on her shoulder, Tanya's grin fierce. Richard's empire collapses, his real estate deals voided. Tom's governor tie a noose as the mic caught his bomb order. "Finish her." A confession that locks him away. Lena limps to the wreckage, her sharp eyes tracing the charred hull, her resolve a steel vow, because she's risen from nothing, taken every hit, and turned it back. Her ownership a secret weapon that flipped the game. The press swarm fades, the night deepens, and she stands, battered but unbroken, her scars. Fuel for a revolution, the airline hers, the fight won, and the world forever changed. Lena Carter's journey in this story teaches us resilience, against systemic injustice. Her climb from nothing to owning an airline, only to face brutal racism, shows that power doesn't shield you from hate, it can amplify it. She endured mockery, violence, and a rigged system, yet turned every attack into a weapon, proving that strength lies in strategy, not just survival. The mob, the corrupt cops, and Richard Hale's empire underestimated her, assuming her race and role defined her worth, a mistake that cost them everything. This reveals a hard truth: prejudice blinds, and those who wield it often dig their own graves. Lena's secret ownership flipped the narrative, a reminder that hidden strength can topple giants. Her scars became her story, not her shame, teaching us to wear our battles proudly and fight smarter, not just harder. The real lesson: respect isn't tied to titles or skin, it's earned through grit, and it's owed to everyone every time. So, what's your takeaway? How do you stand up when the world pushes you down? Drop number 1 in the comments. If Lena's fight inspires you, like if you're fired up for justice, and subscribe for more stories of triumph over tyranny. Share this if you believe respect should rule. Thanks for riding this roller coaster with us, and here's to building a world where courage wins, always.